All right, class, we're getting ready to start our science unit on plants. So I thought it would be a good idea for us to read our book. It's called The Tiny Seed by Carle. And you know how I like to always kind of look at the front of a book before we start reading it to find out what it's going to be about. So let's look at the title first. It says The Tiny Seed. What does the word tiny mean? Who can tell me? Right, it's very small. So who maybe has an idea, has a guess on what's going to happen to this tiny seed? The picture doesn't really give us a lot of clues, but it may give us some. What do you think is going to happen? Let's find out. It is autumn. A strong wind is blowing. It blows flower seeds high in the air and carries them far across the land. One of the seeds is tiny, smaller than all the others. Will it be able to keep up with the others? And where are they going? Okay, so on this page, it said it is autumn. Who remembers another word for autumn? What else do we call that? I'll give you a hint. It's a season. Fall, right. And what on this page lets us know that it's fall? You see the different colored leaves, and you actually see that the leaves are falling from the tree, which is one of the reasons we call it that. So let's find out what happens to these seeds. One of the seeds flies higher than the others. Up, up, up it goes. It flies too high, and the sun's hot rays burn it up. But the tiny seed sails on with the others. Can anyone see the seed that went up too high? Right, it's right there. See it on fire? Another seed lands on a tall and icy mountain. The ice never melts, and the seed cannot grow. The rest of the seeds fly on, but the tiny seed does not go as fast as the others. So why do you think the one that landed on the mountain can't grow? Well, it said the ice never melts and the seeds cannot grow. Why do you think that is? We're going to be talking about some of the things that plants need to grow in our science unit, but I wanted to see what maybe some of you guys already know. Let's find out what happens. Now they fly over the ocean. One seed falls into the water and drowns. The others sail on with the wind, but the tiny seed does not go as high as the others. You see the seed? Yeah, he's right there. He's getting pretty low. I'd be kind of worried about him going into the water and maybe getting eaten by the fish. Just like that one seed, the one that did go in the water. But that tiny seed just keeps chugging along. One seed drifts down onto the desert. It is hot and dry, and the seed cannot grow. Now the tiny seed is flying very low, but the wind pushes it on with the others. You see? Finally, the wind stops and the seed fall gently down on the ground. A bird comes by and eats one seed. The tiny seed is not eaten. It is so small that the bird does not see it. It said that the wind stops and the seeds fall gently down. What does that word gently mean? Does it mean it just goes crashing down to the ground really fast? No. Let's think of a word that is similar to gently, one that sounds kind of like gently. The word gentle, right? It's soft. If you pat it, if you think about how you pat a baby gently, you're not really hard with them because they're very delicate. So the seed falls gently down. We use the word gently to describe how the seed fell. Now it is winter. After their long trip, the seeds settle down. They look just as if they're going to sleep in the earth. Snow falls and covers them like a soft white blanket. Let's pause there real quick. Covers them like a blanket. Who remembers what that's called when we compare two things using the word like or as? It's a simile. Good job. Simile, we're comparing the seed to the snow, or not the seed, the snow to a blanket. Now, does that mean that the snow is nice and warm and cozy like a blanket? No, it just means that there's so much snow that it's covering the whole ground that it just looks like one giant blanket that you've just kind of thrown up in the air and let it lay across the earth. A hungry mouse that also lives in the ground eats a seed for his lunch, but the tiny seed is very still, and the mouse does not see it. Now it is spring. After a few months, the snow has melted. It is really spring. Birds fly by, the sun shines, rain falls. The seeds grow so round and full, they start to burst open a little. Now they are not seeds anymore. They are plants. First, they send roots down into the earth. Then their little stems and leaves begin to grow up toward the sun and air. There is another plant that grows much faster than the new little plants. It is a big fat weed, and it takes all the sunlight and the rain away from one of the small new plants, and that little plant dies. The tiny seed hasn't begun to grow yet. Uh-oh. It will be too late. Hurry! But finally, it starts to grow into a plant. The warm weather also brings the children out to play. They too have been waiting for the sun and spring. One child doesn't see the plants as he runs along, and oh, he breaks one. Now it cannot grow anymore. Uh-oh. That's why we need to watch where we're walking, especially if it's like if you're in a garden, you definitely need to watch where you're walking, because if you break the stalk when they're still really young, they can't grow. The tiny plant that grows from the seed is growing fast, but its neighbors grow even faster. Before the tiny plant has 3 leaves, the other plant has 7. And look, a bud, and now even a flower. Now, I noticed one of our vocabulary words from this week in this sentence, or on this page, says neighbor. The tiny plant that grows from the tiny seed is growing fast, but its neighbor grows even faster. What does that word mean? Usually when we think of neighbors, we think about the people that live around us. Well, that's kind of what it means with these plants. These are all the plants that are growing right next to each other, right? What is happening? First, there are footsteps. Then a shadow looms over them. Then a hand reaches down and breaks off the flower. So they just kind of want you to imagine that you are a plant. And you're just sitting there doing your own thing, growing, minding your own business. And all of a sudden this big hand looms down and grabs you. That's a pretty cool image. What do you think? What do you think, if you didn't already see, what do you think the hand is going to do with the flower that it broke off? Why do you think they did that? Let's find out. A boy has picked the flower to give to his friend. That was sweet. The flower might not think so, but I know I like it when I get flowers. It is summer. Now the tiny plant from the tiny seed is all alone. It grows on and on. It doesn't stop. The sun shines on it and the rain waters it. It has many leaves. It grows taller and taller. It is taller than the people. It is taller than the trees. It is taller than the houses. And now a flower grows on it. People come from far and near to look at this flower. It is the tallest flower they have ever seen. It is a giant flower. So it started off as a tiny seed, but now it is a giant flower. Tiny and giant are what? They're opposites. Another word for that is antonym. We're going to be working with antonyms later on, words that mean the opposite. So tiny and giant would be antonyms. We've talked about synonyms before, words that mean the same. Antonyms are words that mean the opposite. All summer long, the birds and bees and butterflies come visiting. They have never seen such a big and beautiful flower. That is a beautiful flower. Look at all the animals and birds, butterflies, all kinds of things visiting their flower. They like it. Now it is autumn again. The days grow shorter, the nights grow cooler, and the wind carries yellow and red leaves past the flower. Some petals drop, from the giant flower, and they sail along with the bright leaves over the land and down to the ground. Do we see? The wind blows harder. The flower has lost almost all of its petals. It sways and bends away from the wind. Can anyone show me what that looks like? Sways? You show me sways, when the wind's blowing. Have you ever driven by and seen like big crops growing out in the field and the wind blows and they just kind of almost look like they're waving at you because they sway? But the wind grows stronger and shakes the flower once more. The wind shakes the flower, and this time the flower seed pods open. Out come many tiny seeds that quickly sail far away in the wind. So we kind of ended it where we started, right? We started with, see, that's the end. We started it with a seed flowing in the wind, and we ended it with seeds flowing in the wind. That was a pretty good story, right?